Street Genius Part 34. Anada's name really loudly and tell him that the emperor was worried about him. He found Anada in 4 days. Suzuki stayed with Anada in the jungle for some time. Anada had been alone by that point for over a year. And once found by Suzuki, he welcomed the companionship and was desperate to learn what had been happening in the outside world from a Japanese source he could trust. The two men became sort of kind of friends. The two men became sort of kind of friends. Suzuki asked Onoda why he had stayed and continued to fight. Onoda said it was simple. He had been given the order to never surrender. So he stayed. For nearly 30 years, he had simply been following an order. Onoda then asked Suzuki why a hippie boy like himself came looking for him. Suzuki said that he'd left Japan in search of three things: Lieutenant Onoda, a panda bear, and the abominable snowman in that order. The two men had been brought together under the most curious of circumstances. Two well intentioned adventurers chasing false visions of glory like a real life Japanese Don Quixote, Sancho Panza, stuck together in a damp recesses of Philippine jungle, both imagining themselves heroes despite both being doing alone with nothing, doing nothing. Onoda had already been then given up most of his life to a phantom war. Suzuki would give up Suzuki would give his up too, having already found Hiro Onoda and the panda bear. He would die a few years later in Himalayas, still in the search of abominable snowman. Humans often choose to dedicate large portions of their lives to seemingly useless and destructive causes. On the surface, these causes make no sense. It's hard to imagine how Onoda could have been happy on that island for those 30 years, living off insects and rodents, sleeping in the dirt, murdering civilians decade after decade, or why Suzuki tracked off to his own death with no money, no company irons, no money, no companions, and no purpose other than to chase an imaginary yeti. Yet later in his life, Anoda said he regretted nothing. He claimed that he was proud of his choices and his time off Labang. He said that it had been an honor. He said that it had been an honor to devote a sizable portion of his life in service to a non-existent empire. Suzuki had he survived likely would have said something similar, that he was doing exactly what he was meant to do, that he regretted nothing. These men both chose how they wished to suffer. Hiro Onoda chose to suffer for loyalty to a dead empire. Suzuki chose to suffer for adventure, no matter how ill advised. To both men, their suffering meant something. It fulfilled some greater cause, and because it meant something, they were able to endure it and perhaps even enjoy it. If suffering is inevitable, if our problems in life are unavoidable, then question we should be asking is not How do I stop suffering? But why am I suffering? For what purpose I am suffering?